Hi, everyone. Welcome to the August episode of Plugging In. We're here with EC Executive Director Ben Prochazka, who just came back from a whirlwind trip of America in his electric vehicle. And Ben, tell us, where did you go in your EV on a giant road trip with two kiddos and a partner?
Yeah. Well, we decided it would be a great idea for our summer vacation and also connecting it to the first in-person conference that I've been to in 2 years, to drive from North Carolina and Chapel Hill, where we live, to Moab, Utah, and back. And it's about, I think our trip was roughly 4,400 to 4,500 miles. And so, yeah, it was me, the wife, my 4-year-old and my 10-year-old, that we packed into. We have a Tesla Model Y, which we bought about a year and a half ago when it was sort of the only SUV that was kind of really available. There were a few others, but that had the kind of range and stuff that we wanted and needed as our everyday driver. And it was, it was one of those things where I think I dragged along the family on an adventure, not just in going to see, beautiful red rocks and mountains in Colorado and all that kind of stuff, but sort of a test, like how well is this going to work? And the cool thing is, everything works better than I ever thought it would. And it says a lot about how possible the future of transportation being electric is. And really, it's just about the idea of, more education, more experience, because I think it's here and we can do these kinds of things like driving 4,500 miles across the US in an electric car.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. The proof is in the pudding in this case. So tell us, which states did you drive through?
I think you mean the proof is in the plug-in.
The proof is in the plug.
Yeah. Nothing like a little dad joke, as my 10-year-old would roll her eyes saying. So say the question again.
Which states did you travel through?
Yeah, so we ultimately went from, if you want to like get your atlas out, we went from North Carolina into Virginia, into West Virginia, into Indiana, and then you kind of take 70, Interstate 70 west. And so then you end up going through Missouri, Kansas, Colorado, and Utah.
Okay, cool.
And then back.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, and then drove back, same route, so just reverse direction.
Okay, great. So on this trip, did you ever feel range anxiety? We hear a lot about range anxiety.
Yeah, I hate that word. It's like a thing that is like it's dated now because the cars, they have 200 or 300 miles in range. The infrastructure that's been developed is all, like there's this national network, not just for Tesla, but others have worked really hard to develop a network, including Electrify America and EVgo and other companies out there that have been a part of building out a national network. And there's other examples where folks like American Electric Power are developing a plan to electrify the South and things like that. But in this case, the technology takes the guesswork out. So with our example, the car has a great trip planning computer. You put in the start, you put in the end. It'll tell you how many stops you need to make along the way, how long you need to stop at each charging location. It also gives you the ability to make some choices. You can say, like, I want to stop for longer and have the battery be fuller, or I want to make more stops and charge for a shorter amount of time. But even if you don't own a Tesla and doesn't have that computer on it, there's a thing called the Advanced Better Route Planner. And I should say, nobody is giving us resources or money to say these things, right? So Tesla isn't a member, and neither is Advanced Better Route Planner. These are just things that I used and figured out were good tools. Mm-hmm. But Advanced Better Route Planner lets you do the same thing. You can put in the start and the finish, and you put in what car you have, and it'll tell you the exact route, when you should stop, how often, and then you get to control it throughout the way and make all kinds of individual choices. So made it really easy.
Cool. I can think of at least one instance when I did a road trip in the past in a conventional gasoline vehicle where a tool like that would have been helpful, where I wouldn't have run out of gas in the middle of nowhere in the northern New Mexico desert. So anyway, it sounds like some great tools out there. So were there any parts of the country in your route, particularly you were in some really remote rural areas, you were in national parks, where it was challenging to find chargers when you needed them?
No, I mean, I think part of that is because all the technology tells you when and where. So, it's like you don't even have to really think that far ahead. It doesn't require like some like getting out my compass and and having calc and trig ability. It kind of does all those things for you. Um, so in reality, all that stuff was super easy and even fun, right? Like, I mean, some of the parking locations where the chargers are and whatever, they're not that beautiful. That could be like a thing if we can improve in the world. It's like a parking lot of a mall, but it also makes sense that they're there. But, it's like my kids got to see all different parts of the US.
Right.
And so we'd stop for 15 minutes or whatever and charge and get out of the car and play games and that kind of stuff. And so it was a really good sort of family experience too. And I will say this, if I had gone to a gas station with my kids, we're not getting out and playing games and doing that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
Whereas we can do that where these chargers are, and that's a different thing than the other
Hmm.
experience.
Yeah, cool. So, you were, it's been really hot in the West. And and I know that it was
Not
really hot.
just in the West.
Yeah, not just in the West, true. Um, but where you were, they've had some really high temps. And so, what were your high temps, and how did air conditioning and climate control in those temperature, driving around in those temperatures, factor into your charging, or did you do any preconditioning or anything like that?
Well, people probably aren't, they probably do this with any newer car has the ability to like precondition and like make the car so that it's not 150 degrees when you get in the car and stuff. But most EVs today, you can do that. And so you control it through an app on your phone or whatever. So yeah, we absolutely did those kind of things where we would make sure that the car was, at a good temp. But, when we were in Utah, every day it was about 120 degrees. We left Grand Junction, Colorado to drive to Moab, and it was, I mean, on our thing it said it was 125 that day,
Yikes.
and yeah, that's hot.
It's
And
hot.
everything worked fine. And, like people have this idea that somehow there's like some big sacrifice you're going to make to do this kind of stuff. But we had the AC on full. So there's no way my 4-year-old would have put up with like,
A
the
100-degree
cars
car. Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
She would have just said, we're done driving. And then,
I'm out.
uh, and we were, Utah has an 80-mile-per-hour speed limit, right? And we were driving 80 miles an hour, AC full on, and drove from Grand Junction to Moab. And the car performed excellently. And I think that just says the technology is there. And this is something where probably a lot of people out there are like, oh, can we do these things? Absolutely. And even in the most extreme temperatures.
Great. So you obviously felt like this was a very positive experience. And so tell us how your partner and kids um, thought about how the trip went from their perspective.
I'm sure they would have different statements about this for different reasons, right? Uh, but I think in general, the car and the idea that the car is electric was a highlight of the drive, right? Driving that far is always going to have parts that aren't that fun. It's long, you're in the car for a long time, right? Like,
Yeah.
but, but it's like smooth and quiet and not smelly and, all that kind of stuff. So from that perspective, the thing was, that experience was better than it would have been if we were in an internal combustion engine car.
Right.
So that's better. And then, there's cool things that about this that the idea of the guesswork being taken out of it, right? Even when you're in a gas car, most of those aren't necessarily telling you every gas station you should stop at and
No.
how much gas you should put in your car to get to your next spot,
Right.
right? So in some ways, because it's an electric car and you drive it differently, the technology that allows us to do that actually also improves that experience. And so
Mhm.
it's funny, you don't think about it that way, but it actually made the trip better because we just didn't have to think about that or guess at all. So,
Right. Did you see many other EVs on the trail?
well, as you know, because we have a Tesla and it was just what we happen to have. And I think, Tesla has built out a great nationwide network, and I think others are doing the same. And then Elon Musk recently said they were going to open the network to other EV models, not just Tesla models. I'm sure not every Tesla driver is probably excited about that, but it's kind of a funny thing where we would end up like stopping at the same charger at the same time as somebody else, and we kind of follow each other across the country. And we had a particular instance where we were like, had another family that was every time we'd stop, they'd stop, and it was almost on the same schedule because it's just,
Uh-huh.
the car kind of works that way.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, we saw lots of EVs, but I mean, we were a little bit sort of narrow in that because of the Tesla side of things,
Gotcha.
but yeah.
And then, so lastly, what would you say are highlights of the trip? And they don't have to be related to your EV, but they can be.
Mm. Well, going to Arches National Park and Canyonlands were things that I've always loved, and I grew up in the Southwest. And so it's cool to do that with my 10-year-old who's like old enough to have that same kind of connection to the land and the experience and all that kind of stuff.
Have they
Um,
ever been in that area before?
not for a long, long time, and not in a way that she would have had any like
Appreciation.
memory of it.
Hmm.
Um, so a quote, and later she'll probably get mad at me for this, is she was like, I like thought Arches was going to be kind of lame, and this was going to be not that great a trip, but it's such a cool place, right? And seeing the Canyonlands was so cool. We did this zip line course that was super amazing in Moab, and something people should check out, where you zip line over the Slick Rock bike trail. So that part was cool. On the car front, I will say, uh, never like skipping the gas station across the country, and even in a time of COVID, and we have different health concerns. That was even something that was a better thing for us, is we weren't kind of like putting ourselves in those same places of risk sometimes that others might have to if they're driving across the country with gas. And so that was also, I think, in some ways a benefit that, was a cool thing about the car.
Right. Sorry. So, let's see. Those are all the questions I have. Do you have anything that you would want to add about your trip?
I would say, I looked at the math a little bit, right? And if we were driving a car that same distance that you fill up with gas, it was going to cost around, or it would have cost about $500, maybe more, maybe less, depending on the type of gas and,
Right.
that kind of thing, the fuel economy of our car. And ours to charge it, for that 4,400 miles was somewhere around $300 to $325. And so it's like, 40% less to have driven
Right.
electric. And then, none of the maintenance type of stuff that probably would a car might be affected by, right? So like,
Hmm.
we don't have to get an oil change after driving that far because there's no oil.
Right. Bonus.
So it costs less and less maintenance. And I think those are super cool things about driving electric that people probably should learn more about.
Awesome. Great. Well, I'm glad you had a great trip, and it's good to see you back in the saddle here at the EC. And yeah, we're gonna keep on keeping on and making sure that everybody out there in the country is taking great trips like yours, using this amazing transportation technology.
Awesome. If the bipartisan deal happens to build out infrastructure across the country, I think it only means these are more and more possible, because we build out that infrastructure network even more. capable of handling this new transportation future. And so looking forward to that too. So thanks,
Awesome.
Julie. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Ben. And yeah, glad you had a great trip.
All right. Bye.
Bye, everyone.